I've looked at both sides now. From win and lose and still somehow. It's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all. Joni Mitchell's lyrics from both sides now, the music offered by Stephanie in our prelude, expresses some of the complexities of life and community. The reality of winning and losing is an illusion. Either or is an illusion. When I was a little girl, I used to think that life was like a coin. On one side, it had the hard parts that would happen all contained. And on the other side was delight and joy, and that happened all contained. I'd like to think it was my more concrete stage of life. Eventually, I came to learn that that was not true. It was more like a braid together. Hard parts, joy, loss, delight, just a big confusion of everything. I came to understand Joni Mitchell's and words in ways especially over thresholds of time. The ending of a new relationship, the beginning of another, a job transition, loss of a family member, a new hobby, all of these thresholds. Every community I've engaged in has taught me more and more about the nuances of being community together. Hard parts and joy intertwined. Life not as either or, but and. It wasn't an easy lesson to pick up at first. I was a little shocked, honestly, to find out that they're all so squished together. But as with any lesson, when you're learning it, it keeps cropping up over and over until we have that opportunity to figure it out. I didn't always understand how engaging in this sometimes messy part of ongoing relationships allowed and needed flexibility and creativity, and that in reality, it made it a little more exciting. Just like a team sport, we need to be able to encourage each other in shared ministry, be willing to try again and again. One version of this kind of two-sided coin and maybe a less than needed amount of creativity are the times that I've worked with congregations, which I've had the great honor of doing through the UUA, going from congregation to congregation throughout the US. And occasionally I hear in the planning, oh, we don't do that here. We don't say, God, in our church, that reading will not be okay. Well, something, since we're quite new to each other, that you might want to know is I take that as a personal challenge. There have been times when I've joined a new church community and my garden at the time was in bloom and I brought the flowers in, a little bit nervous. And someone said, oh, we have someone who does that already. It wasn't an invitation in, I'll tell you. And it's not the only way forward. When we are open to curiosity, there are magical moments. And one of those happened already in my brief time here. The board, I think I've mentioned this before, but those of you who have not heard me speak of this, the board has a retreat once a year. And this year, there was a retreat And part of the retreat is designed around connecting with each other and also figuring out what the focus of the year is going to be. So we had Nancy Fritz, who's on the board. She's the treasurer. And if you haven't had a chance to let Nancy know that you think she's doing a great job, because now I know you can cheer people on, I encourage you to take those moments and find the people who are doing some of the different kinds of work here and cheer them on. Back to the point. So Nancy was in charge of facilitating this goals process. She helped to set the kind of atmosphere that invited us into dreaming. Like, I love to dream. I used to lay outside and lay on the grass and look up at the clouds for hours. So I'm all into dreaming. And Nancy set that environment and an invitation for us to dream together. She trusted the process and she trusted us. As we worked on this process that she sort of guided us through, the magic for me, besides the excitement of dreaming, came at the end when the two work groups came back together. And they had, both of these work groups, had the same 4 or 5 goals. It gives me chills to think about that. Considering how life teaches us, relationships have the capacity to cultivate growth or shut us down. Coach A, with the focus of being negative, shut down an opportunity of encouragement. Coach B, the second version, the other side of the coin, helped to gracefully encourage someone into their next opportunity of learning. Considering life and community beyond an either-or framework does open our hearts up to the complexity of the world. And I once heard this story about life being like a river, and one bank of the river is chaos, and the other bank is super rigid. And sometimes we land on one bank or the other, but right in the middle, somewhere in the middle of the flow, if we just float and trust the process, it takes us to new places. And like a river, we have the capacity to expand our responses. Sometimes you might be afraid, or I can speak for myself. I have moments when I'm afraid. And when I'm like that, I have to remind myself not to close down or root in something that's super familiar. I have to remind myself of trust, of community, of trusting a process, so that even though I might be afraid, I can also be curious. I had this book, which I honestly never read, but I kept it on my bookshelf for years because it said, "Feel the fear and do it anyway." And really, that was enough. I didn't even need to read the book. So more than one side of a coin at once. We can create space to hold enough. We can make more space in this community to hold one more thing, something new, something that might be a magical adventure. As we open our perspectives and our thoughts, perhaps we might stumble into that magical joy, the surprise, and the opportunities for wonder. Let us create a loving space to experiment together, a space that holds more and more as we live into new ways of being together.